Howdy, I'm Yojimbo Blade. This topic wasn't actually the one I was planning to do next, but I decided that it was more relevant to do it now, since Zhao was just revealed as a defense agent. This is sort of a response to Dwarf Rance's video, and it's a good video. I want you to watch it. And I want to also have a nice, healthy, insightful discussion. I don't have any real specific problem with the content of the video, I just have an issue with his opening statement. And I want to quote it fully because I don't want to take what he says out of context. This is what Dwarf Rance thinks about defense. It doesn't have a supported purpose in the current design and direction, and I don't think there's any real need to try and save it. ZZZ's core gameplay has very consistently supported not getting hit in the first place, so survivability and agents built around it are actually working against that design and pretty useless in practice. Since you have the tools you need to not get hit, dying slowly isn't actually useful unless you are playing poorly. You don't need a role that only supports playing poorly. So, for the record, I want to say that the first part of his statement is totally correct. Defense currently does not serve a useful purpose in the current gameplay loop. The identity of the defense class is supposed to be survivability, and we are currently in a system where that identity has been given to every new character. Everyone is getting a bunch more invincible moves, which defeats the purpose of needing a class that helps you survive, and they are also giving HP tools to support, which takes away the point of having a defense character. Right now, defense is essentially support but different, kind of like how stun is essentially support but with high days. But defense's difference is not important enough outside of niche game modes that most players don't play, and I will address that later. And it doesn't help that most new DPS agents have their additional require stun or support, or something like that. So players are conditioned to care about those classes instead of defense. I have a 4-page script ready to go discussing additional abilities, but I decided this discussion should come out first. I greatly disagree with the sentiment that the game should get rid of defense. A class whose whole role is to promote survivability opens the door for some cool design choices if the devs decide to do them. When Dwarf Rance says you don't need a role that only supports playing poorly, the word need is doing a lot of work in this sentence. I am going to make a claim that I do not believe in at all, but this is just for the sake of discussion. You don't need a role that only supports playing well. Yes, this statement is technically true, but it's really narrow-minded, and you can tell because of the follow-up question. Would good players enjoy being rewarded for playing well? Why, yes. Yes, they would. Now let's take that response and rephrase it for the original statement. Would weak players enjoy the game more if they were less punished for playing poorly? Why, yes. Yes, they would. So why is it a bad design choice to help players who struggle with the action part of the action RPG? And I'm not just making this up because I feel like it. You can see this being practically used in the 2.4 livestream. When describing Banyue, they do not hide the fact that Banyue is going to be a much challenging character to play well. And for the average Zenless player, they are going to struggle playing him than they will playing other characters. So when they show off this little trial event featuring Banyue, who are they pairing him with? Are they pairing him with an agent who will help the good players play even better? Like Jufufu or Lucia? No, they aren't. They pair him with Caesar. Why? Because they correctly identify that the most important thing to do when having the average Zenless player play this character is to help them not get punished for making mistakes. And Caesar is fantastic at helping players not be punished for their mistakes. Now, I want to make this very clear before I go on. There is nothing bad about being a weak player, and there is nothing good about being a good player. Many Triple Z players do not have good or better skills, especially if they aren't playing every day or every week. And that's perfectly fine. I want this game to be enjoyed by as many people as possible without sacrificing its core identity. Telling players that they have the tools to not get hit so they shouldn't get hit is not helpful because that's simply not realistic unless you are very skilled or very passionate. What those players would need to do is sit down and practice to really understand the game, and many players don't want to do that. That's fine. They would rather focus on the things that are important or that they care about. The reason I cleared all 100 floors of the Battle Tower, both the original and in version 1.4 to 2.0, using a solo Billy without ever getting hit, was because I enjoyed playing the game and proving the doubters wrong. And as far as I know, I am the only player who has ever done that no-hit challenge using only a single agent. That is a completely unrealistic expectation for any player. Now, I want to be very clear. I don't believe that this is what Dwarfrance meant when he said these words. Dwarfrance would probably never say this, but it can sound like that this is what he means when he says it. If someone asks for advice because they struggle playing, and someone else tells them that they should just play better, that person is a moron. If any player who struggles playing the game asks me if they should pull for Caesar, and for now I am ignoring the loaded meaning behind the word should and like the financial reasons behind that as well, my answer to them is always yes. Why? Well, at first, Caesar's value is inversely related to your skill. If someone is an amazingly skilled player, Caesar is less valuable, and if someone is a badly skilled player, Caesar is probably the most valuable support in the game. So at a surface level, you might say, well, it's a 50-50, you have to know how good they are. But the players asking for advice on who to pull are most likely not good players. They might be decent, they might be okay, but they're not quite at that level of good. Players like R2, Yoji, and Leno are not asking me for pull advice because they are really good at the game and very comfortable playing whatever they want to play. The players asking for this kind of help are not action RPG masters. They are the players who are struggling. What does the defense class do? They are supposed to help the players who are struggling to survive playing the game. Now, as a rational person, let me address the biggest problem with what I just said. I said defense is supposed to help players survive, but I also acknowledged that this support aspect isn't important right now. So before I go on, let me address the time this aspect was important. At the launch of the game, the casual endgame mode of Hollow Zero was called Withered Domain. In this mode, you can select up to 6 agents to take on a semi-roguelike dungeon, each with various traps and challenges, and it was never the exact same each time. As part of this, some of the dungeons had traps or corruptions that lowered your HP, and you had to find resources if you wanted to replenish it. In this context, defense agents are really good. They help you out by essentially giving you more health that isn't attached to your HP bar, and giving you an agent with really high HP or defense ensures that you can survive whatever challenge the game throws at you, and when it turns out you don't need them anymore, you can swap them off the team. Unfortunately, Withered Domain is not really important anymore, so that utility doesn't matter. Another important mode is the Battle Tower, but that mode is really more of a Caesar showcase and wants you to have more than just a generic shield. Enemies hit a bit too hard, and since it doesn't have polychrome awards attached to it past, I think, around floor 15, most players don't bother playing it extensively, and that's fair. However, I think there are 2 things the devs could do if they want to make defense agents feel much better in gameplay. It all depends on how they want to implement it. Very briefly in Shiyu Defense, the devs at one point gave us ambush nodes, which were kind of like the tower but different. All you had to do was beat the enemies while keeping your agents alive, and players really liked it. And then they didn't do anything with it. If they decided to somehow merge that aspect into the current Shiyu Defense, they could make you use one team to take on a continuous challenge, like you have to do both side 1 and side 2, but without being healed. Or they could adjust it so that the fights and the times you want to get last a little bit longer, and this allows for more opportunities for players to make mistakes, but without the fear of dying in just a couple hits, because that's too punishing and unfun. Then, defense agents would be really useful for a large majority of players. I've said this before, but sometimes a defense agent is better because it saves you real-world time playing the game. A fight where I reset because I get hit too many times would have been faster if I had a defense agent. Even if the in-game time turns out to be slower, the real-world time I save makes it much faster. The other thing they could do is something like they have in Withered Domain. There are times where you are forced to take damage because of its roguelike nature. Now, I am not arguing that there should be like moments where you have to take damage and you can't do anything about it, and I'm not arguing that they bring back Withered Domain, even if I do really enjoy it. I am suggesting that in combat, maybe they will decide to create a move that allows some enemies to bypass all of those invincible moves that they've been giving to agents. Very briefly, Street Fighter 6 has a move called a parry. This move is on one button, so everyone can use it very easily, and it's completely invincible to every move in the game except throws. Throws completely bypass this invincibility. There is more to that discussion, but I'm going to stop it there because this is not a Street Fighter video. If Zenless ever decides to introduce this mechanic where some, not all, but some enemies can punish you for doing a ton of invincible moves carelessly, defense agents could be useful to mitigate that punishment. It all depends on how the devs execute it. I am not arguing for enemy power creep, I am arguing for engagement and gameplay. I have never loved the gameplay where I functionally ignore everything the enemy does. While I find it fun for a while, eventually I'll find it monotonous and want to play something different. Adding a mechanic to encourage players to be careful when they do these invincible moves that aren't with a perfect dodge, I think that would make the game overall healthier. I don't want the devs to scrap defense, I just want them to alter the gameplay loop slightly so that players will want to consider using defense agents. Funny enough, Street Fighter 6 also introduced a new control scheme called Modern Controls. While it does take away a few moves from characters, it also makes the game much simpler to play. Someone silly probably made the argument that you don't need a control scheme that only supports playing poorly. Well, it turns out Capcom disagreed with that. They want people to enjoy playing the game even if they are not very comfortable playing fighting games. And they definitely made a lot more money based on that decision, and some other factors including their World Tour story mode. Even some pro players have chosen to use modern controls because it rewards their strategies and reaction times better than the classic controls. The other things to do to make defense better are just the generic things. It would be nice to give them a drive disc set like King of the Summit or Moonlight Lullaby, something that will actually help them support the team in a way that only they can fill. And they want actually good and generic W engines. Support is heavily buffed because of Lucy's Kaboom the Cannon and Rina's Weeping Cradle, and stun is similar for Steam Oven and Kaleda's Hellfire gears. Defense agents don't have any available options that are as generically good as those. Anyway, that's it from me. I plan to make my next discussion video about additional abilities, and that tangentially relates to how the defense class is viewed. Go check out Dwarf Rants if you haven't. He's a chill dude and a pretty good thinker. Before I forget, shout out to my sponsors, including I Love My PC, for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys so much. If you would like to become a sponsor of this channel, it's as simple as becoming a member. If that's not your cup of tea, totally fine. Leaving a like or a comment is more than enough. Subscribe if you feel like it, and if you want others to see this, share this with them. My name is Yojimbo Blade, and I hope you have a blessed day. See you soon.